Yeah, I think you see it in many ways. First, just before I elaborate on that, just I've seen that video too, and I just what also struck me is the way sometimes the Rebbe would push someone like that. You could say push someone or not admonish, but sort of like, oh, what are you gonna do about that? But he
Yeah,
would say it in such a with a twinkle in his eye and like
such a smile. Yeah.
such a smile. You are listening to the JP Show,
Where we discuss the issues you care about from a Jewish perspective.
I am Rabbi G,
I am Rabbi Levi.
and we hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome everyone back to another episode of the JP Show. How you doing, Rabbi Levi?
Baruch Hashem. It's definitely interesting, exciting times we're living in.
Amazing. And I think before we start the show, it's important to mention, as people have been doing, it's a bit of a complicated time because while there's pain happening and danger and have been people, unfortunately, who have lost their homes in Israel and even deaths, but we also have to make sure to acknowledge the unbelievable hand of Hashem and the unbelievable miracles that have been happening
Yep.
the last couple of weeks, particularly this week. So it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Definitely historic times.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I think before we get to the topic, what people sometimes forget, like when you look back at like amazing things that have happened, like for example, the Six-Day War, for example, right, which ended with us getting back the whole Jerusalem.
Yeah.
When they were actually living it, there was a lot of pain then as well, and a lot of unfortunately deaths, and so a lot of times, like when you're able to zoom out of something, you see the whole picture. So I think when we look back at this, we'll definitely that doesn't negate the pain, but it definitely gives it more.
Of course, and I think like even something like which is I think also around this time of the year. It's, I don't know, maybe I've forgotten the exact date, but the Entebbe rescue from Entebbe happened, which
Yes.
was openly miraculous.
Yeah.
No one could explain some of the things that happened there other than just being a godly miracle.
Mm.
And there was also pain. As things aren't perfect until Mashiach comes, the world is not perfect.
Yeah.
And there was, there was a couple of those hostages, unfortunately, that died, and Yoni Netanyahu died.
Yeah.
But looking back, it was an incredible, amazing miracle. And as we say in the Amidah every day when we daven, we thank God for His daily miracles, especially the ones that we can see are incredibly miraculous.
Yeah.
So it's amazing times.
So on to today's topic. So this coming Sunday is the third of Tammuz, Gimel Tammuz, which is the 31st Yartzeit, the anniversary of the passing of the Rebbe, of the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory. Someone who I never merited to meet physically, but you did, and you spent a lot of time with him. I say I never met him physically. I definitely met him spiritually in the sense that my whole life has been inspired by him. I think it's also important to mention at the onset that BINA, our whole institution, everything we do here is because of him, inspired by him. It's his mission. The only reason why you're in Sydney is because of him. I see no other reason why someone, not I'm joking. Sydney's an amazing place, but someone to come from America to live in Sydney is definitely a long trip. And definitely was inspired by his mission of spreading Torah and Judaism and the light of Hashem throughout the whole world. So it's a special day for us. It's a special day, I think, for everyone. The whole world has been affected by the Rebbe's vision and by the Rebbe's mission.
Yeah.
And we were taught, I think, in Kabbalah and Hasidic teachings that on the day of a Yartzeit, the energy of that tzaddik, the energy of that righteous person shines. And it's a special day to be able to tap into what he stood for and what he lived for and what he taught us. And yes, that's a special week. So I was thinking, I mean, we've spoken about the Rebbe many times, of course, and I was thinking to start off like this. There's actually an interesting letter that the Rebbe himself wrote in 1950, which was a few months after his Rebbe, who was his father-in-law as well, the previous Rebbe, passed away. And during that whole time, he was writing letters of comfort to the Hasidim and how his father-in-law is still with us, sort of spiritually, and all of that. And it was the year sort of in between when his father-in-law passed away and when he officially accepted upon himself the mantle of leadership. And there's a letter, which is actually, the interesting thing about the letter is it's dated the 3rd of Tammuz, so which would later become his Yartzeit many years later. And the letter is speaking about his father-in-law. He's not speaking about himself, obviously. And he's speaking about the uniqueness of his father-in-law. And there are many Jewish leaders and many great Jewish people and righteous people. But he points out there that most of the time you find tzaddikim, you find righteous people that excel or give to the Jewish people in one specific area. So you have those that are great Torah scholars that give in-depth Torah in the revealed parts of Torah, and then those are the sort of deep Kabbalists and those that deal with physical sort of stuff to do with the Jewish people and help the Jewish people out physically, and there's sort of different categories. But he was saying there how the uniqueness of his father-in-law is that he sort of had all of them, and so that's what he sort of points out in the letter there. And I think that if that is true about the previous Rebbe, I don't want to say even more, but it's definitely true about the Rebbe of our Rebbe. Something extremely unique. It's just like there's no area of life that in the Jewish people that you can think of that he didn't teach about, they didn't touch, they didn't go there. Is that a correct? I think it's like. Even like if you think about what's going on now, right, with Israel. I mean, the Rebbe was heavily involved in what's going on in Israel, both in being in contact with prime ministers and government officials, and spoke a lot about Israel and what he felt what the right path that Israel should take. And a lot of what we see now is actually sort of vindicates a lot of what he says. But it's about everything.
Yes, I think that's very true. And I think it goes together with something else. I mean, the Rebbe was very global and very broad. And you're right. The leadership was incredible. That every topic, we just had a BINA last week, for example, a completely different idea, context, and area. Someone put together all the Rebbe's letters in a very organized, structured way about the Rebbe's advice for emotional well-being. Right? So there's like an amazing man there. Then there's Israel. Then there's Torah learning. There's the teaching, the depth of Hasidic teaching and Talmudic teaching, the Rebbe shared was incredible. Their volume, 36 volumes of we call it Kotei Sichot, and that's just one set, and then there's unedited works, and then the letters. I mean, it's incredible, right? But I want to, so that's medical stuff, political stuff, even a lot about talking about the non-Jewish world and how we should be a light unto the nations and what we should do to influence. There was a time that he had this amazing campaign where he believed that in public schools in America there should be this concept called moment of silence, because he said crime is on the rise, which is so true. Crime is on the rise because people don't think about God, and he acknowledged, whether he agreed with it or not, a separate story, but he acknowledged that there's a separation between church and state in America, and therefore it'd be difficult to bring prayer into the schools. But he said there should be a moment of silence. Everyone can think whatever they want, but we'll give people an opportunity to reflect, and that could have a positive impact. All these amazing things, and the people that stories came out in the last 31 years, which we never even knew about, the people that he reached, and the people that he met with, high-profile people, low-profile people, and the outcomes. It's absolutely incredible. Blessings in there. But I want to add sort of also just two ideas that I think enhance that whole idea. Number one, also, we need to also understand, and I don't think this is the reason for his breath, I'm just saying it's an interesting observation. The Rebbe's leadership came just a few years after the Holocaust, where the Jewish nation was really and truly broken in many ways, right? And the Rebbe, I'm sure, saw the mission of rebuilding, right? But it was rebuilding through action. He actually he spoke about the Holocaust. He did speak about it. And and he himself went through, he was miraculously saved, and he had close family members that perished in the Holocaust and so on, including a brother. But he turned his attention towards building, and that was the theme, I think, of his whole leadership. Build Am Yisrael. Let's build Am Yisrael. And he had this unbelievable reach and unbelievable impact. And the way he did it was, and I think it's the second point I want to make, is that he thought big, very big. When the Rebbe would talk about, for example, he had what's called these mitzvah campaigns, right? I mean, yes, the Rebbe had followers, and he had Chabad Hasidim, and there was a circle of people that considered themselves officially his followers, right? But he didn't only focus on his followers, he focused on the world. When the Rebbe would write, he would put out a letter before every festival, and he would address it to Al Kol B'nai U'Benot Yisrael, to every Jew, male and female. That's right. I'm sending a letter to the Jewish nation, right? That's right. But he put it into practice. I mean, he was not happy until there would be that impact. So, for example, you would have these mitzvah campaigns, right? One of the first ones, I believe, was the giving of matzah to people before Pesach, right? And I remember him talking. I was there when he spoke about it many times, right? And the way he would talk, the way he would rev up the crowd was, I'm not telling you to go and give out matzah to a few people. I'm telling you, you need to make a campaign that there should not be one Jew left in the world that doesn't have matzah for Pesach. Now, whether that practically happened or not, whether it actually happened or not, maybe we're still working on it. But it was the mindset, it was the perspective, it was the way you have to look at it. That the job is not complete until every single Jew has a matzah before Pesach. Shmura matzah before Pesach.
And I mean, that was both when he launched these campaigns and in response. I mean, I heard from someone, I can't remember the exact number here. I might get some of the details wrong, but there's a rabbi in Melbourne. His name is Rabbi Gordon.
Yeah.
And when he was a bocher and he was still single, he was in Florida, I think it was, in Miami, as like a shliach. And he wrote to the Rebbe that he put on mezuzahs. It was the time when the Rebbe was speaking about how every Jewish home has to have a mezuzah. And maybe it was like 30 houses or something. It was significant. It wasn't few. And basically, the Rebbe wrote back to him like, there are thousands of Jews in Miami, like like that's all. Like only. I mean, it was written obviously with love, and it wasn't written in a critical way, but it was written in order to empower and encourage. Like, come on, you could do a lot more than that. You're much more powerful than you think you are, type of thing.
Sure. But just one more thing.
Yeah.
And with all of that, the Rebbe paid attention to individuals in a very, very amazing way.
Yeah, there's so many stories of that for sure.
Yeah.
I think, and this will probably lead us to another aspect of what he stood for. We talk about how amazing the Rebbe was and what an amazing leader he was. It just reminds me of a story which I think almost it really goes to the essence of things. Someone, the Rebbe used to give out dollars every Sunday famously for tzedakah, and there was a time that, a few moments, people were able to ask for blessings. And this is on video, I've seen this. Someone came and that person had already met the Rebbe like 30 years before or something, like in a private audience. And the Rebbe almost like continued the conversation. It was like, we spoke about this last time you were here. And the guy was just like totally blown away that the Rebbe, after meeting thousands of people every week, would remember something that he said to someone 30 years ago. Say in like complete awe, he's like, Rebbe, he's speaking in English, you're amazing. Like, you're just unbelievable. So on the spot, the Rebbe said to him, and what are you going to gain from the fact that I'm amazing? I think what he was trying to say was, like, it's very nice that I'm amazing. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to actually take my teachings and actually put it into practice? Like, are you actually going to learn from me? And I think what he was trying to say there, something he said many times in different ways, like the most important thing, I think, if you could say that, to the Rebbe was action. And this is something he mentioned so many times. You can speak about things, you can get excited about something, you can, it's all good. But if you don't actually do it, you don't actually, the whole point of it, he quote many, many times, I mean, countless of times, the phrase, "Ha'maisa hu ha'ikar." Action is the main thing. Action is the main thing. And that came out in many ways. And one interesting way, and I know I've spoken about this before, and maybe you can elaborate on this, it is a very interesting perspective, and perhaps not one that one would take like without learning this. He definitely valued action over perfection. Meaning, if you're going to do something and it's going to take you a lot longer to get it perfect, better do it quickly than do it perfect. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that there's no parameters. And obviously, he was extremely strict in the fact that everything has to follow Jewish law and has to be within a certain context. But perfection actually wasn't necessarily the aspiration. It was about getting it done. Is that a correct thing to say? Like, is that...
Yeah, I think you see it in many ways. First, just before I elaborate on that, I've seen that video too. And what also struck me is the way sometimes the Rebbe would push someone like that. You could say push someone, or not admonish, but sort of like, oh, what are you going to do about that? But he would say it with a twinkle in his eye and like
such a smile,
such a smile that he could completely get away with it. Like, it was genuine. I think that's why, because it was like I love you, but that's why I'm going to push you. So yeah, I think it's completely correct. I think it comes out in many ways. First of all, I remember many times when the Rebbe would request something to be done, he felt it was important. So, for example, he would say that he thinks that. I'll give you an example. So, the Rebbe, when he had a campaign which he started one of the years, that people should study daily the works of the Rambam. right? Maimonides. Now, it became a whole thing about the studying of the Rambam, separate discussion of why that's so important, but let's leave that for now. And then it became a whole thing about the Rambam. And the Rebbe said, it's interesting because the style of the Rambam was that all the halachot, all the Jewish laws that the Rambam put together, he never gives references of where they come from, like where in the Talmud and where in the Midrashim, or all the writings that came before the Rambam doesn't give references. So the Rebbe wanted a book published that should research from different commentaries of where the Rambam got his laws from, right? And then the Rebbe would speak about this. He spoke about this publicly, and then there would be a bunch of people who would volunteer to do this. And the Rebbe says he wants it by a certain date, and it was like a man was like crazy, because the Rebbe always gave, when you talk about action, he always gave urgency to action.
Yeah.
But don't start making a meeting and getting together a committee and who's going to be the most professional person to do this, and just get a bunch of guys who can do it, who have skill and get capable, and then just get it done. And the Rebbe then acknowledged, I'm using this example because the Rebbe said such a work undoubtedly is going to have mistakes, right? But get it done, and then we'll review it and edit it, and then we'll put out a second edition with all the things you have to fix, right?
Yeah.
And, I think also I've often thought about this, that the Rebbe had this whole thing called shluchim, right? So he would say he had this army which is continuously growing even till today, of people to go and spread Yiddishkeit all over the world. Now, obviously, when people go out, he spoke many times about it, like when the conferences happen, it's good for people to learn and to improve their own skills and so on and so forth. But there was like a requirement that you got to like train for 3 years before you become a shliach. They right. Said, you have what to give, go. Just I want dedication, go.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly 100%. You'll learn, you'll figure. Now, obviously, they wanted people to be humble and to know what they don't know, and obviously to skill up and to learn, etc., etc. But it was about just let's get it done, because that's how you build a nation. And then again, like I think going back, that was building Am Yisrael, especially after the Holocaust. He was building. And what he wanted was more than anything else, more than skill, he wanted dedication. And if those who know the story of the early shluchim, when the Rebbe sent emissaries at the time when he started, it was considered the most bizarre thing. He took young people in New York away from their families and sent them to who knows where. Even if you sent them to Italy or to England or to Australia for sure. It was everywhere. It was considered the other end of the earth. And people, even parents, were sort of struggling with this, right? But what did he ask for? He just asked, so you want to be dedicated? This is what you got to do. Go and you'll figure it out. I mean, he gave guidance and he gave rules and instruction and so on, but it was about, let's get it done. I think that's right. I think it was about, even on the individual, if you do a mitzvah, just do it.
Yeah. And perhaps, if we take it a step deeper, which I think goes to perhaps the essence of his perspective, that maybe the reason for this, that it's not really about perfection, it's about getting it done, is that sometimes when someone aspires for perfection, the reason for that is because it's about, even in a subtle way, it's somewhat to do with their ego. In other words, like you need it to be perfect because otherwise, I'm not going to feel good about it. It's like, it's sort of like shows something bad about me. And to him, his whole life, actually, I mean, everything about the Rebbe and everything that he taught, really the essence of it is a Mishnah that he quoted, also there's certain phrases that would, I mean, I was never there, but I listened to a lot of his talks, sort of comes up almost every single talk. So one of them is Amaisa Hua Iker, that one, that actually is the most important thing. Yeah. And another one is a Mishnah that says, Ani nivreisi l'shamish eskoini, that I was created to serve God. And that is the purpose and the essence of everything. Everything that we do, it's not about me, it's not about my ego, it's not about me feeling good about it, it's about doing whatever God wants. Yeah, fulfilling my divine purpose, the reason why I was born. And that's it. It's not about being perfect. It's not about being it's about, in fact, there's so many examples you can bring for this, but there's someone who I heard the story from him actually. When he was a teenager in yeshiva, he didn't feel like he was like really learning, to sort of at the level of some of the great commentaries that he was learning. He didn't feel like he would ever get there to be one of sort of a great mind. And one time he penned a letter to the Rebbe about it. He said, I don't feel like I'm going to be anything big through my learning. I'm not going to be this great Torah scholar. And so the Rebbe basically wrote back to him, like, who says that's what it's about? It's about learning. Like, God wants you to learn, so learn. It's not about becoming the greatest. It's about doing whatever you were supposed to do. And obviously, he didn't mean that you shouldn't push yourself. Of course you should push yourself. But the point is not to reach here. The point is to do what you have to do at this particular moment.
Right. At the same time, he made it very clear that there's room for growth. Do what you can do now,
Yeah,
and then do it better next year or tomorrow or whatever.
yeah,
You can always grow, and growth was a big aspect there.
yeah, for sure. So, what do you think you have that I don't? What I mean by that is, what did you gain, not just by learn, because I've obviously, I mean, I haven't even scratched the surface of his teachings because there's so much of it, but I have been steeped in it and I have learned it over the years. Um, and you've obviously also as well, but you were physically there. You saw him, you lived, you spent more than a year there, many festivals, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. And what do you have that maybe I don't have? So what did you gain by being there present? What did you see?
Ooh, that's a that's a very broad question. I'll tell you why. Because actually, there's something very phenomenal about the Rebbe's leadership. The Zohar says, and the Rebbe would quote it when he would talk about the previous Rebbe. I mean, I'll get to your question in a second, but just the Zohar says that when great people pass away, the influence continues, and the neshama transcends space and time, and they're able to affect people maybe even greater sometimes because they don't have the constraints of the body, right? So yes, I mean, look, I wouldn't give up for anything what I experienced. Obviously, we're physical people, and to physically see the Rebbe and to watch him in action and to hear talks from him physically, I had the tremendous merit when I grew up in South Africa, but when I was 13, my grandfather took me to see the Rebbe for the first time. And at that time, the Rebbe was still giving private audiences. Somewhere in the middle of the night, I had like a 4-minute audience with the Rebbe, and I asked him for a blessing, and he tested me and on what I was learning at the time, which was interesting. But and he gave me certain blessings and directives. So look, you can't replace that. But phenomenally, obviously, we see something amazing with the Rebbe's legacy, if you can call it that, or the Rebbe's teachings, or the Rebbe's inspiration, that it is beyond his physical presence. There are people today who are younger who never saw the Rebbe physically that are great Hasidim. I see with my own children; they're very connected, more connected than I am, maybe, and they are they're very into it, as if they've seen. I mean, look, there are some physical things that have helped. Thank God we have the great treasure that all the Rebbe's talks were recorded. Most of them, I mean, 99.9% of them were recorded.
The ones that during the week, obviously. Yeah.
During the week, the ones that were on Shabbos all transcribed. We have videos. We have videos of the Rebbe, so many different Farbrengens and experiences with all videos. So you get a sense. You get a sense of his physical presence and his physical life, and that certainly helps understand the context of his teaching. So that's certainly something that is so important today, which is beautiful. It's a gift that we were given. But it's a phenomenal thing. I mean, again, I mentioned before the idea of shlichut, of going out to far-flung places of the earth. I mean, you have a friend that took himself off, who never saw the Rebbe, and took himself off to Barbados.
I think he never saw the Rebbe that he remembers. I think he actually did,
As a baby.
was physically there, but yeah, that doesn't,
Okay, but
not
he
the
never had that
conscious.
experience, like the consciously.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And he was very dedicated, as you are, and all your friends, or many of your friends, to fulfill the Rebbe's mission. And someone came up, and him and his wife took themselves to the Barbados. I don't even know where Barbados are. I mean, it is like, I mean, that's not saying much because my geography is very bad anyway. But I do know one
An
thing:
island.
there's not a thriving Jewish community there.
No.
Like we complain about the lack of kosher restaurants in Sydney. I don't think there is any. I don't know what there is over there, but there's nothing. And it's lonely, and it's difficult. It's a difficult life, and he's got to do it all himself. Young guy, right? Not just away from his family. It doesn't have the infrastructure of a Jewish community where he can, I don't know, get strength. And he's doing it. He's doing it. I've met him after that for a few times through you, and it's amazing. And where did that dedication come from? It comes from that inspiration. It hasn't. There were people that after 1994, when the Rebbe physically passed on, said that it would decline, and it hasn't. Actually, it's boomed, which I find phenomenal. So what do I have? I have the physical experience that you don't have, which is very, very special, and I wouldn't give it up for anything. But on the other hand, it's Hashem's ways are interesting, and the Rebbe was very clear that the inspiration continues and the blessings continue, and one can visit the Rebbe's resting place today and pray, and as thousands and thousands of people do from all walks of life. And there's tremendous influence still and inspiration.
Yeah. So I think maybe we can make a suggestion. It's coming, obviously, his Yartzeit this Sunday, which is, as I said, a special day. And we can all, anyone listening, could do something in honor of that. And I think the thing that he would most want, and he does want from up on high, is us for us to do more mitzvahs. I don't think there was nothing more precious to the Rebbe than a Jew doing a mitzvah. I can't think of anything
Doing a
more
mitzvah or
important.
learning some Torah. So those two.
Yeah, that which is also, of course, a mitzvah, the most important mitzvah, to learn. Either learn something, put on tefillin, light Shabbos candles this Shabbos. And I think especially now, something that he very much emphasized was the power of a mitzvah. The power of a mitzvah, that it can bring down tremendous blessing. I mentioned before mezuzahs. Mezuzahs brings protection for the Jewish people. Tefillin, he spoke about, brings protection for the Jewish people, especially in Israel, in the army. So we need that now, and we need blessings. We need tremendous blessings. Maybe in honor of his Yartzeit, we can all do something just a little bit extra to tap into that special energy.
Excellent idea.
All right.
Very good, everyone. We'll see you next week, please God, and
See ya.
have a good week.